Hi, my name's Mark Huggard, and I've got a couple of stories to tell you. I hope you hang with me and don't move over to another story for a minute, and you need to hear all of this. This is about corrupt government, and this consists of two of my grandchildren who were taken from us by Child Protection of Isabella County. And is what this came down to was the youngest child was injured at birth through a C-section delivery where they used a vacuum on the child several times. And in this situation, the child had all kinds of health problems for months. He couldn't open his eyes for 3.5 weeks. He vomited every time he ate, and he had all kinds of problems with getting enough air to get a cry going. Finally, at 4 months, there's more testing done where they x-ray him, and we can see some injured ribs that were probably causing the breathing problems. They were mostly healed up. This was at 4 months old. And also there was a anti-compression fracture on the skull, which would explain the swelling of the head and the bruising all over the head and everything at birth. And this compression was going outwards, so it had to be sucked in order to have this anti-compression. So as time went on, they checked this stuff out, and they started to blame us. And my daughter and her husband and her children had moved in with me to save up to buy a home. And so we were all together in my home, and we started working with Child Protection. And they wouldn't listen to us. They wouldn't listen to how many times this child had been to the doctor and how many problems he had and whatever. So finally, we remembered that we had a birthing video of the child. And we started looking at that, and lo and behold, you could see bruises on the child in a circular fashion exactly where they were claiming that the child had injured ribs, and exactly where his head had this anti-compression fracture. And I want to tell you right off the bat, the child is fine now, thank goodness. He's 6 years old. It took 5.5 years of me fighting to get justice and to get restitution, and you can't get Child Protection into the courtroom. They are above the law, basically. And so we had a 9-day trial. After they blamed us for these injuries, we had to hire a very expensive attorney and take these people to court to get our children back. After 9 days of holy hell, we get the children back. And they used the birthing video and took professional pictures out of the video to get this accomplished with a lot of the situation. And I'll show you a few of the pictures here, and maybe you can see what we went through. This is the child at birth, and right here were the injured ribs, and right there is a big circular bruise. I don't know if you can see that very good, but it was zoomed in on an earlier status. Here you can see he's laying on his side, and his ribs are all bubbled up and bruised on top here. And this is all yellow and bruised down through his abdomen. And in this video, this child would scream every time they touched this leg. His head is black. It was bruised. His chest has a lump in the chest where something got ruptured, and you can see the swollenness and the lines going down into this rib where it's all swelled up. And here's a little bit different angle. You can see these ribs, how they're all doubled up and bruised and red. And again, you can see how black his head is. And here's another one in the weigh scale where you can see that purple circular bruise, and these ribs are all roughed up and bruised here. His eyes were swelled shut for 3.5 weeks. We never even knew what color his eyes were. He vomited every time he ate, not once in a while, but every time he ate, and he couldn't get enough air to get a cry going. he would gasp for air, and then he would finally get a cry after 6 or 7 times of gasping. And we figure now that it must have been the ribs. And we had the child at home doctoring with a billy bed at the house. There was so much jaundice. And then there was 7 pages of birthing records of nothing but bruised cheek, bruised crown of the forehead, upper lip, swelling of the parietal area. You got a bruised face. We went through these. Here we go. It's more jaundice in the face and the chest and the legs. Bruised face, loud screams, flexing in the arms. This kid was going crazy. You never heard screaming. Every time they would touch the left leg of this child would go crazy. And in a C-section, you wouldn't expect this kind of delivery where the child is bruised all over the place. Face, chest, bruised, 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 bruised. And so normally in a C-section delivery, that's the easiest type of delivery on the child. And they had some sort of difficulty, so we weren't so much worried that they had trouble with the delivery of the child. But when they figured out that he had injuries 4 months later, they blamed us instead of the doctor. And so the day before Thanksgiving of 2009, and I've been fighting ever since 2009. They took these 2 boys, the brother was 5, and the newborn was 4 months at that time, and they took them and hid them in a place called Eagle Boys Village in the center of Michigan, in the middle of nowhere, basically. And they put these 2 kids into foster care. Even though I have a beautiful family. I had a son that's a safety coordinator for a big corporation in Traverse City, Michigan, and his wife's a special ed teacher. The grandmother was a paraprofessional at an elementary school, and everybody wanted to take these 2 children until they got this figured out, because we had to pull out the birthing video and we were going to have to go and prove that the doctor injured this child and not somebody in my family. So anyway, no, they didn't put these kids, they put them in a foster care out in the middle of nowhere, and a rather low income area too. And so in 2 days, the 5-year-old was put into a new home, a new family, a new school, and a new life. And on the first visitation, it took 12 days before we got to see this child. He didn't hear from nobody, he didn't get to see anybody, he didn't understand what was going on, and when they finally saw him, he was basically having a nervous breakdown. And the 4-month-old, thank goodness, he was young enough that he wasn't realizing what was happening. Not as much as the older brother anyway. And so as this was happening, we're realizing we've got to figure something out and quick, because when your children are taken from you, it's a nightmare. You can't sleep, you can't quit crying, you can't quit worrying, especially if you're innocent. And so we had to hire an attorney, which cost a lot of money. And I won't be afraid to say his name because he's one of the finest child protection attorneys probably in the state of Michigan. His name is Michael Cronkright out of Lansing, Michigan. And thank goodness we had him. But anyway, we got this. We didn't get to trial from the time she took him of November 24th, I believe, till the date of the trial was clear up into April, because everything drags out so long. Meanwhile, these children are just being destroyed and scared to death. And so we hired this attorney, and at the same time all this is going on with the kids and their family and everything, I'm injured. I'm going on my 3rd surgery. I've got pins and plates in my back, pins and plates in my neck, broken vertebrae up and down my spine. I'm getting ready now to head into the 5th surgery, and I used my money that was meant to help me physically and medically to save these kids. And what we thought might be $10,000, $15,000 ended up being $62,000 to get these children back in their home and to straighten this mess out. And so that's why I'm coming to the people of Michigan or the United States or whatever. I'm not too up on the Facebook and social media or anything, so I have a friend helping me here. But I've never asked for anything in my life from anybody, any help in any way. And I was the guy that knew how to do everything and take care of everything, and I did. But I need help this time. And I fought for 5 years to try to get these people and hold them liable for everything they did. But our lawmakers have put child protection above the law. They told me if they could be sued, if they could be held up in court, they couldn't do their job. Well, all that does is makes them deceptive, cold, dishonest, anything they have to do to get their job done. And I also learned as I went through this trial and watched several other ones that they use the same judge, the same caseworker, the same lawyers, the same group of people, and they just keep doing one thing from one family to the other to the other. In my case, I had that money there from being injured, and I was able to pay this attorney and get a good attorney. But the downside of that is I lost my medical money, my co-payments for my surgeries, and everything else involved with being injured. And when this happened, it was like you thought your life couldn't get any worse, and then all of a sudden our beautiful grandchildren are taken. And these children couldn't have been loved, hugged, kissed any more than they were. And thank goodness they're pretty much okay. The older boy deals with all kinds of attention deficit, which he never had before that. He lives on 2 medications. When we got him back, he had colon problems. We took him to MSU. They told us his rectum and his colon had been expanded. We took him to a counselor over that. We didn't know if he got molested or raped or what happened when he was in foster care. And we were counseled to just try to let him forget it and deal with it. And it's the easiest thing on the child. And so he was 5 years old, and so that's what we've tried to do. And it took 2 years of special medicine and exercises to heal his colon. He would have to push in on his abdomen as he used the toilet, and he would have to take laxatives and different things. So he had accidents all the time at school too. So it was a never-ending nightmare for everybody. And after this whole mess was done and the trial was done, the children came home, and we have never seen those people ever again. And I'm hoping all the heck that I raised during these 5 years, that some of them aren't working there any longer. I don't know. But the caseworker, when she filed the petition, the different articles in the petition were so false, misleading, or completely made up. This was the original petition, these 2 pages, that she wrote all this stuff on. And it was so screwed up and wrong that before we could even start the trial, they were granted permission by the court to revamp the whole petition and take out all the stuff that wasn't true. And when we finally got to court, our attorney was he was fighting 2 or 3 attorneys the whole time because they were all ganging up on us. And thank goodness he was very professional. And so I guess I grew up with a mother that was a caseworker for child protection over in Midland County. And so I lived in that atmosphere where she was helping families, trying to fix families, trying to make sure the kids were okay and whatever. And so I lived in that atmosphere my whole younger life. And then to be on the other side of it when we were innocent was a very tough thing to go through. If you've ever been falsely accused of anything, you can't explain that feeling to people. Your neighbors, your grandkids aren't in your front yard playing. Your relatives are asking how they're doing, where they're at, what's going on. They're not there. You don't get to see them hardly. It's unbelievable what goes on, because we have to have child protection. There's cases that need attention to, and children are abused and neglected. But what happens with those cases when it's a wrongful take and they were wrong? The caseworker wouldn't listen to us. She wouldn't look at the birthing video that we had, because these pictures are taken out of a birthing video by a professional. Okay, so all these different pictures I have were pulled right out of the video that happened at birth. And we couldn't get her, we even gave her a copy, and nobody would pay attention to it. And then about a month after we dealt with this lady, she takes these children. And so you can't believe, I guess, the cost of one of these situations. And if I wouldn't have used that money to obtain this good attorney, we would have had to work this whole situation with court-appointed attorneys. And they're all working together. The whole group in the courtroom is like a team. And normally people who get caught up in these cases, they don't have any money. And in this case, through my injuries and stuff, I had some money. And if I wouldn't have, we probably wouldn't have our kids right now. Because it took a lot of thinking and a lot of work and study to straighten this thing out. And you would think it's just simple. You have a video, you can show the injuries, and it's over with. You're innocent. That's not how the courts work. The courts aren't about justice. They're about what I found out. They're about who can lie the best, I guess, is almost like what it is, because I never heard any truth come out of the other side. Their doctor got impeached 3 or 4 times. There was all kinds of situations in that courtroom that you would think that they would just throw it out and they would stop the case and give the kids back. But they don't do it. You have to fight right to the end, and with no evidence on the other side, you wonder how that can go on. And so I'm just asking to help us out. My daughter's still PTSD. This is 5 years later. My son-in-law is not the same. He used to be so cheery and joking and stuff. He's not the same kid. And the 5-year-old is now just turning 11. And he's got his problems with attention deficit problems. The baby that this happened to seems to be doing the best. And he's healthy and everything seems fine. But to put a family through that kind of 6 months of hell and to lose your whole savings is just crazy. This should never happen to anybody. They should sit down, they should talk things over, they should listen. They didn't do any of that. It was just do it my way, and then they put the family through all kinds of things, because it took 6 months to straighten it out. So they had control of my family for 6 months. And they didn't need to put those kids 100 miles from us. They had them 100 miles from my family in the middle of winter. And they just made it as rough as they could on us to do anything that we needed to do. And so if anybody would ever want to contact me and look at any of this stuff, this is the file. This is the file. This stuff would come every day as you're going through this, warning you to do this and do that and whatever, and get in here and doctor reports and records and you name it, one thing after the other. And you just keep on hoping that it would be over. You would go to bed feeling like you were in a nightmare, not wanting to go to sleep because you knew of the bad dreams that would come, and then you didn't want to wake up because you had to deal with it the next day and nothing had changed. And that's 6 months of that. And so you almost wish that the people that caused this, that they would have went through the same thing you did. And maybe they could talk and tell people about it, and some of this stuff would stop, because I think it happens a lot. And I even worked with their public relations officer. I think it was David Ackerman. And he was impossible. And he wanted to look at the pictures and everything to prove the innocence of the child. When I sent the pictures to him, I never heard from him again. So I don't know what goes on with that kind of stuff, why they're so against trying to get the truth and the innocence in a situation so harming, but that's what you go through. And in child protection, I don't know if anybody knows this, but you know, we all think that we're all innocent till proven guilty. Do you know that the law is reversed in child protection? You are guilty until proven innocent. And a lot of that is because children are involved. And so they're trying to do what's best for the kids, I think is what, but still, that makes it so tough because everybody is injured emotionally, sometimes physically, sometimes financially, and so it's a tough road to go. And so if anybody would like to contact me, my email is mdh1346@gmail.com. If there's anything you would like to look at, any conversation you'd like to hold with me, I'm not a real techie person. I'm 57 years old, and I have problems, so I can't talk all the time, and I can't be up any time of the day. So I'd have to set something up, but if we could get together and talk about this stuff, I'll just show you real quick some of the injuries that I have that I'm dealing with. And this is me, Mark Huggard. This is a plate they put in my neck. They took out the discs and put cadaver bones and screws and plates. And then in the lower back, there's rods up through here, and there's cages you can't see that are between the vertebrae. And these are large screws with set plates on them where you tighten down this flexible rod holds it in place. So all this holds in place, and then these cages are between the vertebrae and they fuse in there. And then up in my chest area, there's 2 broken vertebrae and a herniated disc. And so I deal with this every day with a lot of pain. I've got 2 or 3 surgeries ahead of me, but these people took my money that was for my co-pays and for all the different reasons you run into. When you're going through a lot of medical, you find out you may have insurance, but it only covers a portion of what you're going through. And anybody that's been through anything, they can tell you the same. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I hope that somebody will look at this and possibly help our family out. I need help for my medical reasons, and the kids don't even have money for counseling and stuff like that. So I'll look forward to communicating with some of you, and I appreciate your time and everything. Thanks.